June will take you back to a bloody history, in the 19th century, how the United Kingdom succeeded in destroying China's economic system through financial colonization and made China its financial slave. In the late Qing dynasty, Western powers competed fiercely in China, and Britain was one of them. Before, Britain had acquired India as a colony, but if it wants to control China like it controls India, the possibility is very small. Because of the amount, the UK thought of using financial means to make China fall into the financial trap of the UK step by step. When it comes to the financial plundering of China by the UK, we have to mention HSBC. After the Second Opium War, Hong Kong became the center of Western countries' trade with China. Although there were several banks headquartered in the United Kingdom and India, there was a lack of local financial exchange institutions, which could not meet the actual needs of trade with China. Robinson, the governor of Hong Kong at that time, hoped to establish a bank headquartered in Hong Kong, which could not only meet the needs of trade, but also contribute to the public utilities of the colonial government of Hong Kong. At this time, HSBC was born, and its establishment is a bit accidental. HSBC, the product of foreigners joining together for profit. Once, Thomas Sutherland, the business director of the British Shipping Company in Hong Kong, was on the way to the southeast coast by ship, and saw a magazine on board, which had an introduction to the banking industry. He had a premonition that this would be a very good opportunity to make money. Later, in a conversation with the captain, he learned that some businessmen in Mumbai had set up a Royal Bank of China, and after offering 2/3 of the shares in India, they planned to recruit the remaining shares in China. It seemed that someone had the same idea as him. Time is money. In order to race against time, Sutherland drew up a plan for the establishment of HSBC Bank that night. In order to make things go smoothly, the next day, he showed the plan to Pollard, a well-known lawyer in Hong Kong at that time. Pollard had a wide network of contacts. With his help, 14 well-known British, American, French, and German foreign firms in Hong Kong at that time, including Base Hunt, Kianqi, Ding, and Sassoon, all signed the plan and provided for the bank. Endorsement. Why did everyone sign so happily? Because there is such a paragraph in the HSBC Bank's launch letter. In the past few years, the domestic and foreign trade in Hong Kong and the treaty ports of China and Japan has increased so rapidly that people feel that it is urgent to increase the banking business for the foreign banks currently in China. Only the head office is in the United Kingdom or branches in India. Their purpose is limited to exchange activities between their own country and China. It is difficult to meet the needs of local trade, and this trade has become so extensive and complicated compared with the past few years. HSBC it is to make up for this shortcoming. The position it would acquire in this colony is practically the same as that of the Bank of India in India, or that of the Bank of Australia in Australia. Therefore, it is entirely reasonable to expect the success of this enterprise. The prosperity of other foreign-owned local enterprises in China clearly shows that these companies have obtained the most lucrative profits, and they have owners and shareholders of local interest groups, whose support constitutes a major factor of profit. As a result, HSBC was formally established and became the only foreign bank headquartered in China at that time and whose capital was also denominated in silver dollars that circulated in China. For the sake of common interests, foreign firms from various countries who endorse HSBC have joined together. They are both HSBC's promoters and its customers, and they are intimate with each other and cooperate tacitly. The foreigners huddled together to plot against the Qing dynasty, but the Qing dynasty was still intriguing and torn apart, utilizing factional struggles within the Qing court to control China with China. The political situation in the late Qing dynasty was divided into the Westernization faction and the conservative faction, and they fought against each other. Different factions operate independently and do not belong to each other, and there are also competitions and even attacks among them, forming a kind of restraint between them. The British took advantage of the disunity within the Qing dynasty, especially the factional struggles within the Westernization group, and used China to control China with ease and without any disadvantage. HSBC's first political loan was the Taiwan Defense Loan in Fujian in 1874, which was also the first large-scale loan made by the Qing government. During Zhou Zongtang's expedition to the west and the Agaba Rebellion, HSBC provided him with loans 3 times. This yakubo was originally a chess piece used by Britain and Russia to fight for hegemony in Central Asia. It received money from both the British and the Russians. Both countries encouraged it to expand to Xinjiang in order to encroach on China's territory. It's just that Russia's control over Yakubo became deeper later, and Britain was upset, so it provided a loan to Zhou Zongtang and used the hands of the Chinese to teach the Russians. Because of these borrowings, HSBC has drawn closer to the Xiangxi Group. People in the Xiangxi Group thought that the HSBC Group borrowed money to help them solve their problems, and they didn't doubt it, but they didn't expect to fall into a well-designed trap step by step. After Zhou Zongtang regained Xinjiang, Zheng Qiuaban's son Zhenghis became famous for signing the Sino-Russian Ely Treaty, according to which Russia returned the occupied Ely to the Qing government. Unexpectedly, this move was unanimously praised by Britain, France, the United States and other countries, praising Zhenghis as a genius diplomat who has created a miracle. Zhenghis. Actually, is that true? Although the Qing dynasty took back the territory near Ely, it still ceded more than 70,000 square kilometers of territory in the northeast of Tachin. It's just that after Zhenghis bargained, he got less. Of course, Zhenghis stood out when the average level of other diplomats in the Qing court was very low at that time. Westerners have another purpose in praising Zhenghis and exalting his status. For what purpose? When HSBC issued banknotes in 1881, Zhenghis was asked to write an inscription on the banknotes to exaggerate his achievements, which could increase the trust of the people in the Qing dynasty in the banknotes, and thus smoothly grasp the right to issue banknotes. When the people of the Qing dynasty heard that HSBC banknotes were endorsed by Zhenghis, a great hero of the Qing dynasty, there must be no problem. Using this banknote is an act of patriotism, so they can use HSBC banknotes with confidence. The private capital of the Qing dynasty gathered under the name of HSBC, which further enhanced its ability to launch financial attacks on the Qing dynasty. Just as in the Second Hundred Years' War between Britain and France, the French bought a large amount of national bonds issued by the Bank of England, and most of these funds became the funds of the British Army. British financial capital actually used the French to defeat France. After more than 100 years of evolution, the British financial industry has improved a lot, but it still remains the same. HSBC uses the financial power formed by Chinese private capital to attack China through financial means. Shen Xianhuai colluded with HSBC to defeat Hu Suiyan. In 1882, Hu Suiyan, a red-top businessman allied with Zhou Zongtang, gambled with European traders on the raw silk trade and hoarded a large amount of raw silk, but was lured into a trap by carefully designed false news. Hu Suiyan. In order to get Hu Suiyan hooked, British financial capital used the Shanghai Shenzhen controlled by them, the boss behind the Shenzhen is the boss of HSBC, to frantically create public opinion and hype the hot market in the raw silk market. At that time, industrial and commercial enterprises of the Westernization group in the Qing dynasty also began to issue stocks. The Shenzhen continuously published comments, gave positive comments on the stocks, and drove up the stock market. At that time, the media information was very scarce, and the Shenbao was basically the only channel to understand the stock market situation. The people of the Qing dynasty had never seen such a situation, and thought it was a God-given opportunity to make a fortune. Banks borrow money to speculate in stocks, and the market has abundant liquidity and an optimistic atmosphere. By the way, in 1720, British financial capital relied on speculating on the shares of the South Sea Company to create the so-called South Sea Bubble, looting the wealth of the traditional British aristocracy in one fell swoop, causing a large number of old British aristocrats to go bankrupt overnight, and making financial capitalists unhappy. With little effort, he has mastered the political power of Britain. Even the great scientist Newton was deeply trapped and lost a lot of money. After so many years of playing, financial capitalists have already mastered the tricks of manipulating the stock market to rob wealth. No matter how shrewd Hu Suiyan is, he is not an opponent of foreign financiers who have been involved in the turmoil of the financial crisis for many years, and can easily fall into the trap. After exhausting his own funds, he borrowed 6.5 million taels of silver from HSBC, set a period of 7 years, and repaid it every 6 months, with a principal and interest of about 500,000 taels. The following year, he borrowed another 4 million taels from HSBC, for a total of 10 million taels. These two loans are guaranteed by the co-payments of the provinces. The tragedy of Hu Suiyan is that he was not only tricked by sophisticated foreign financiers, but also betrayed by some within the Westernization movement. The person who betrayed him was Shen Xianhuai, a red-cap businessman next to Li Hongzhang. Shen Xianhuai. Shen Xianhuai tried his best to find out the inside story of Hu Suiyan's funds. In order to defeat his political opponents, he notified HSBC to act at the moment when Hu's funds were most tight, which hit Hu Suiyan's vitals. The Shenzhen changed its optimistic view a while ago, and began to slander the Chinese stock market frantically, and the stock market fell in response. Chinese stockholders who were investing in stocks for the first time had never seen such a situation. Panic spread in the market and liquidity suddenly tightened. Hu Suiyan's bank is facing a run on the bank, and foreign banks are also collecting loans from him, so they can only sell the raw silk stock at a discount. The huge chain of Hu's business empire collapsed.
What's your purpose to go to school?
More than 10 million taels of silver.
It's already almost 11
This is not to
o'clock.
mention, which triggered a chain of financial crises,
I don't
starting from
understand. You
Shanghai,
understand?
spreading to Jingxi,
If you don't want to
Hankow,
study, you don't
Tianjin,
study.
Ningbo, Hangzhou,
I-
and other places.
I understand, but
In Shanghai alone,
why don't study
68
at
of the 78
8:30?
banks and banks closed down, and the closed
Okay.
businesses there are as many
Okay.
as 300 or 400
Bye-bye.
companies. The consequences of the financial collapse immediately endangered commerce, agriculture, and handicrafts in various places, and caused great damage to the social economy. It is known as the 1883 financial wave in history. This financial turmoil drained the Qing government's working capital at once. Hu Suiyan died in depression, and the Qing government quickly fell into the financial net woven by the British. Former residents of Hu Suiyan. From then on, Shen Xianhuai made steady progress, fulfilled his long-cherished wish to control the Shipping Merchants Bureau, and was invited by Zhang Haidong to return to Hubei to prepare for the Hanyang Iron Works. After that, Shen Xianhuai was appointed as Minister of Commerce, Minister of Post and Communications, etc., and became the real helm of the Westernization movement. In April last year, Wen Xiang, Secretary of the Party Committee of the China Insurance Regulatory Commission, was investigated. Premier Li said something very serious: illegal behaviors such as individual supervisors and company executives stealing themselves, colluding with financial giants inside and outside, must be severely punished according to law, and be a warning to others. You see, this is nothing new. There was a precedent 100 years ago. The pricing power falls into the hands of the British side. Since then, the more the Qing government carried out the Westernization movement, the more foreign financiers controlled the Qing government, because all large expenditures were completed by borrowing from foreign banks. Due to a large amount of borrowing, the Qing government's dependence on foreign banks such as HSBC was deepened. After the Zhengzi change, Shen Xianhuai even advocated mutual protection in the southeast, which further disintegrated the ruling foundation of the Qing government and laid the groundwork for the warlord chaos that followed. In other words, Shen Xianhuai was actually the biggest inner ghost who caused the downfall of the Qing government. In 1877, Davan Keswick of Jardine Matheson joined the board of directors of HSBC, marking that Jardine Matheson, which dominated the foreign trade of the Qing dynasty, and HSBC Bank, which controlled the financial lifeline of the Qing dynasty, finally joined hands with the two most powerful British consortia. The closer cooperation between the two parties was the establishment of the Chinese and British Bank Company in 1898. The representative of Jardine was Keswick, and the representative of HSBC was Cameron, the manager of the London branch. This company was later reorganized into China Railway Co., Limited, which specialized in borrowing money for road construction in China. Jardine Matheson was responsible for contracting the construction of railways, supplying locomotives, and railway ancillary facilities, and HSBC was responsible for the finance. Successively borrowed from railways such as Shanghai Nanjing, Guangzhou Kowloon, Shanghai Hangzhou Ningbo, Yuehan, Beijing Jiangxi, and the southern section of Jinpio. The former side of Jardine Matheson on the Bund in Shanghai. Through these loans, the British controlled most of the areas along these railways and manipulated the raw materials and mineral resources in these areas. After entering the 20th century, HSBC's industrial lending has been widely extended to many industrial sectors such as flour, machinery, leather, chemistry, hardware, etc., further controlling China's economic lifeline. At that time, Britain and the United States implemented the gold standard, and China implemented the silver standard for 354 years from 1581 to 1935. In fact, gold and silver are not superior or inferior in themselves, they are just equivalent to using different currencies. However, since the British took the lead in trade and finance, the pricing power of trade between China and the UK was completely controlled by the British, making gold a strong currency, and Chinese commodities priced in silver were systematically undervalued. In addition, Britain imported a large amount of opium into China, and China's trade surplus that had lasted for 2,000 years was reversed and turned into a large deficit, which exacerbated China's economic decline. Other powers also turned to the gold standard and joined in the game of looting China's wealth. From the 1880s, HSBC also managed the accounts of the China Customs General Taxation Department, whose deposits included office expenses, fines and confiscated payments, ship tonnage taxes, and various handling fees and other special payments. HSBC has become a microcosm of foreign financial forces controlling China. HSBC was closely integrated with the British official power, which had a special status in China at that time, and soon became the overlord of financial capital in the Greater China region, and became the channel for the British Empire to suck blood from the Qing dynasty. For Britain's financial plunder from China, China gradually fell into the abyss of poverty and weakness, and made the hard work that will be recorded in the annals of history. China's first railway, Songhu Railway, the financing institution is HSBC. The first large-scale military operation using a modern logistics system, Zhou Zongtang's expedition to Xinjiang. Although his general manager Hu Suiyan came from an old Chinese bank, the largest source of funds raised came from HSBC. Tongzi Zhongxin, organizing westernization, building the Beiyang fleet, and raising military expenditures for the Sino-Japanese War of 1899 to 1999 also had the shadow of HSBC. In the Xianzhou Treaty, the Qing court paid 450 million taels of silver to the 8 countries, and the first collection bank was HSBC. After Xianzhou, the Qing government tried to revive and borrowed heavily from Britain, Germany, France, and Russia, and the undertaking bank was HSBC. The Qing dynasty collapsed, and the Republic of China big loans were aftermath, and the undertaking bank was also HSBC. Even before and after the revolution of 1911, the assets of the princes and dignitaries of the Qing dynasty fled abroad one after another, and most of them were realized through HSBC. The Beijing branches of foreign banks are basically concentrated in Dongjiaomen Lane. With the continuous borrowing, various taxation and financial powers of the Qing government fell into the hands of foreigners one after another, and it has been completely reduced to a zombie government. With the help of the Qing government, foreign financial institutions continued to suck the bones from the Chinese people, and China fell to a position even worse than India. On the other hand, Japan, through the formation of chaebols controlled by the Japanese themselves, gradually got rid of the status of being bullied by outsiders, thus controlling their own destiny. Through the Sino-Japanese War, Japan further obtained a large amount of capital from the Qing dynasty's indemnity, and further embarked on the road of industrial rise. In order to curb Russia's expansion in the Far East, Britain gave Japan a large amount of blood transfusion to support its further strengthening. Later, in order to challenge the hegemony of the United Kingdom, the United States used Japan as a thug to strengthen its strength, and finally made Japan the hegemony of Asia.